If you're looking for a clean, sober, professional, academic,
well-researched, historically accurate, generally accurate, serious podcast
on Southern folklore, ghosts, bizarre events, and unique people,
this podcast is not for you.
However, if you've decided you can live with that,
then join us for The Strange South.
The Strange South.
Oh, I kept forgetting to light my candle from Jen. I gotta light it. It's not scented or anything. Right. It's just supposed to bring good luck. And Jesus, if we don't need it. Yes. Don't even say that shit.
Oh, just remind me to blow these candles.
I told you my neighbor's house burned down, didn't I?
I was there. I wasn't there, but I drove up.
It fell down.
Okay.
It fell down there. That's right.
Yeah, I came over.
That's right.
That was the last night I saw you.
Oh my God, yes.
It was Christmas
Eve. Jesus Christ. Since then, Courtney's been posting all these things about how your cats can burn your house down. What did you say?
Hi, Marleah.
Hi, Patrice. Hi, absent Courtney.
Hi, absent Courtney.
We're missing our bartender.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't say what we're drinking.
Mm-mm. She would not approve.
No, she wouldn't approve.
Or she might, knowing how desperate we are without her.
No, she still wouldn't approve.
Oh, shit.
She thinks we can do better. You gotta do better than just pop the can. No glug glug.
No glug glug. We are all glug glug tonight.
Yeah, it's been an exciting couple of weeks. We apologize for our delays in recording and posting, but the COVID has finally hit our little tiny family of podcasters.
Yes.
So I was out with it for my 10-day of isolation and quarantine, and now Courtney is out with it.
Oh, God.
It's completely separate.
Yes.
Because Patrice is made of steel.
No, don't say that, because I will be like in the hospital tomorrow.
Don't even say that. Knock, 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 everybody.
I should not put. I know better to put than putting stuff out in the universe. I'm fucked.
Saint Dolly's looking after you. She's staring at you right now from your table. Saint Dolly is looking out for you right now. May Saint Dolly watch over all of us. Yes. And Saint Betty. They while I was in isolation, which was mentally actually pretty good for me, I would say. It doesn't always, I mean, only because I didn't feel like shit, I felt like I had a cold. Right. Yay, vaccines. But I watched all of 9 Perfect Strangers. I enjoyed that show a lot. I binge watched 9 Perfect Strangers.
Oh, that was the Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman. Nicole Kidman. Yes. And I always it's not Megan Mullally. She's from Will and Grace. It's shit. Why can I never remember her name?
It's
Kate. No, it's not Kate McKinnon either. It's that other lady that
holy fuck. I can picture her.
I know, and I know her name.
And she was on the Lorelai with Suki.
We know that you're screaming her name.
You are screaming her
right
name.
Now.
Right. It is. And I'm not even going to Google it.
No.
Shame on us.
We're going to remember it like halfway through and just scream it out.
We're not.
No, Courtney will listen to this and she'll be screaming it this entire time. She's going to like break a window.
Why did y'all not wait for me?
She loves
y'all obviously cannot manage.
She's great in that show though, whoever this lady is. Yes. She's really funny. And
McCarthy.
Yes, McCarthy. With the first name.
Mrs. McCarthy. Miss McCarthy.
Yes, that one.
Yes, Miss McCarthy is fabulous.
So yeah, she's really good in it. And what else did I rewatched? All of Gentleman Jack. I read The Goldfinch, which is a massive book, but I had a whole lot of time on my hands.
Oh wow, how was The Goldfinch?
It was good. It was really good. It's just like it's crazy, just wide ranging novel about like art theft and gamblers and child like abuse, and this sounds really depressing. It's kind of a depressing book actually. Yeah. But it's good. It's
long and depressing.
It's very long, but I loved it. I really did like it. It's a good read. It's good for introspective times.
Oh, nice.
Like COVID.
Fuck COVID.
Fuck it.
Yes.
Fuck it all to hell.
We had some mail.
It's in my car.
It's in your car.
Okay, hold on. It's because I'm so excited.
I know.
Because there's a package.
It's a package.
All right. There was a package in the P.O. box.
And I believe it's from Kenneth.
Oh, that's right. Hold on.
Oh. Sound effects.
Oracle of the Ages.
Nice.
Reflections on the curious life of fortune teller Mahalie Lancaster.
Sounds like somebody we need to talk about.
So there we go.
Let me see that cover. That looks cool.
It does look really cool.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kenneth.
Yes, thank
That
you.
is amazing.
I hope that's who it's from. There's no little gifty thing in here.
I think it is because he emailed saying, "Did you get the book?"
Oh, well, then that would be it then.
And so I didn't want to say anything. I was like, I kind of know, but I don't know what the book's about. So thank you so much, Kenneth.
Yes,
you
that's
are
awesome.
A gem.
That's so sweet. We got some Christmas cards. We got some books.
I'll start.
Yay!
Starting right now. Got me some readers so I can see my screen. Okay, can't see it that good. So tonight's story is brought to you by an email we received, which I get all the good emails telling me of all the good things I should cover, and I keep
never get them
all to myself because I'm like,
true.
Marleah can handle herself. And she does so well.
No, fair.
I just need a little help, and I appreciate it. I will start sharing these emails. It's been more of a technical thing than me. Well, half technical, half me being selfish. But we
know how you are.
Right. We got an email, and it says, "Hello, Patrice, Marleah, and Courtney. I grew up in Virginia Beach, and our best story is that of Grace Sherwood,
Okay.
the witch of Witch Duck Road."
What the what?
That's exactly what I said. She is the last person convicted of witchcraft in Virginia,
No way.
and her survival story is pretty amazing. I'm including her Wikipedia link. She knows how we roll. Wikipedia. Lore also did a great episode on her, but I can't find the episode number, and it was in 2017. I looked on Lore. I could not find it, but I found a YouTube of him reading the story because he published several books, and it's in one of his books. And he did a reading, so I'll include that on the show page. My favorite part of her story is that a local Girl Scout troop spent several days or service days cleaning her statue, a fantastic way to continue to stick the middle finger to the patriarchy.
Go Girl Scouts, and you're flipping the bird.
Right?
You got the middle finger patch.
Right. Yes, that's what we need. Oh my God. Look for the middle finger patch from the Strange South coming to a store near you.
Patent pending.
Patent pending. Yes. Okay. Thank you for your podcast. I feel like I'm spending time happily eavesdropping on friends. All the best, Ashley.
Oh, thanks, Ashley.
Thanks so much, Ashley. And I already sent her a little happy.
Yay.
For being so awesome. And she returned with an email with even more suggestions that I'm hiding
That
from
I'm never
you.
going to see.
All right. So here goes the story of Grace Sherwood.
That's a great name, by the way.
It is a great name. So I listened to a couple of podcasts about her. Witches, Magic, Murder, and Mystery podcasts. Their episode 59, where they covered Grace Sherwood. I also got a lot of information from the Virginia History podcast, which I think is wonderful. So that this person does like a state history podcast, And he did a Halloween episode where he interviewed this group of people that come together. They're called Shades of Our Past Reenactors, and they reenact stories from Virginia's past. And they did one of her. And then, like I said, Lore, in his book called Stories from the World of Lore, Wicked Morals, Aaron Mankey did a story called Rise Above. And that's why I couldn't find it, because he called it Rise Above instead of her name. And he read it, and it was, he added his own little, there's several like legends associated with it. So there's several different versions, like all like tells.
Like all good stories.
Or lore. And so he added his own little narrative and stuff to it. So we're dealing with the facts that aren't there, people. We're going to guess. We're going to assume. We're going to give credit, probably where credit is not due. We're just going to shape this history how we want it to be shaped. All right. Grace Sherwood, also known as the Witch of Pungo.
Pungo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Grace was born in 1660 to John and Susan White. And she was born in Pongo, Virginia, which is in the Virginia Beach area as we know it today. Pongo is a very interesting name. I had to look that up, but it derives from the local Indian tribe. They were called the Machipongo or Machipongo, if you're Italian, I guess.
Machipongo.
The Machipongo were a branch of the Chesapeake tribe, which I was like, Chesapeake? I was like, well, yeah, that's a fucking, Native American name. Sorry. My 90s, 80s roots are showing. And I was like, okay, yeah, legit. So Pongo. So during the 1600s, just to put us into this history, this time, because I need to relate like what's going on at that time. I know just from my basic 5th grade education knowledge on history that, it's before the Civil War. It's during like the English colonies time. Actually, right when she was born, 1660, it's right after England is coming out of their own little civil war. And their civil war was actually 3 different wars. It was mainly Parliament against the Royalists. So, and they were not really fighting over, well, they were, everybody's always fights over power, right? But the main thing that they were fighting about were like what religion should be happening and how to rule. And you can tell like Parliament and Royalists, like monarchy versus the people, how that's going to play out, as we did in the Revolution War, right? So, the Puritists have already come over because they want religious freedom. Scotland and Ireland were also mixed up in the Civil War. And so it doesn't really say, like, we don't really know when Grace's dad came over, but he was a Scottish carpenter and a farmer. And I believe her mom, Susan, was of English descent. So anyway, it's uncertain whether they were born there, when they came over, whatnot. But it is certain that Grace was born there in Pongo County to this carpenter and farmer. Of course, they never say anything about the mother. It's always like, her dad, you just assume that she was a homemaker. But I'm sure Grace's mom, Susan, worked her ass off doing everything else, as we can tell later on by how Grace handles things. In 1680, when she was 20, Grace married a respected small farm landowner named James Sherwood, and they got married in the Lynn Haven Parish Church. Her dad gave them about 50 acres.
Dang.
When they got married. So they had land. They were it's almost like they were land poor. So they had a lot of land, but they didn't have a lot of coin. And of course, working their ass off just to eat and just to maintain, status quo. And I looked up like 50 because I have to, again, context, y'all. I have to have context. I can't assume like I know what 50 acres are. And so,
I know, I'm just like, that's big.
It's big, right? We just think that's big. But 50 acres, I went to measureofthings.com, which is a fabulous website because it gives you perspective, but it always gives you perspective on things like up north that I have no fucking clue about. So 50 acres is basically the size of Grand Central Station. Like, I don't know how fucking, like, I've never been to Grand Central. So great. Now it's another thing that I don't know how big is. Not that I'm a football follower, but
I knew it was going to football.
We all measure things by the size of footballs and football stadiums.
Football fields.
Football
fields.
fields.
This is all the parking lots around.
Right. Grand Central Station, which I'm like, really? Grand Central Station is that fucking big? It's 50 acres, is 38 football fields.
Wow.
So it's pretty, it's nothing to sneeze at. Her and her husband, James, had 3 sons, John Jr., James Jr., and Richard.
JJ, and Dick.
Exactly. Grace's dad died and left her his remaining 145 acres.
Jesus.
So she had almost 200 acres total gifted to her. So I guess her mom had already died. Again, not many records kept. Don't really know. Nobody says.
That seems like a small family to keep like 200 acres.
And I'm sure this is just the rough. I don't think that they owned slaves, but I do not know. I mean, I cannot say yes or no. But from what I've read from and listened to, like the historical podcast and stuff, it doesn't say anything. It says that James tended to planting and growing stuff, and she actually donned. She wore a pair of pants.
You've been doing crossword.
And fed chickens, fed the livestock, and kept an herb garden. And so growing
medicinal herbs.
Medicinal herbs and witchy herbs, apparently, which goes hand in hand in colonial New England area. So she tended the livestock. She, grew herbs. She did all the things around the house. She had 3 boys, which God bless her. And she helped treat, like when her livestock got sick, she would help use the herbs to treat them for their ailments. And she did the same for people. She was a good person wanting to help other people, which always gets you in trouble. And she was also a midwife because back then it was all hands on deck. A lot of the people, they were considered middle class, but they were living pretty much in middle class and lower poverty area where people, there were no doctors. It was rural. It was farmers and stuff. So, and she had 3 fucking boys and survived. So, she's going to help out. And she seems to be like a very take charge kind of woman. From what has been described about her, she was tall. She was, they say beautiful, but, take it with a grain of salt. They don't have any pictures of her, so how could they know? So she was tall, and she was very in charge, and she was a funny person. So she was a very personable person, easy to get along with.
In charge always makes you a witch.
Right? Yes. Especially like growing herbs. So, and who's to say she wasn't growing some marijuana or milk of the poppy?
Some herb.
Right? And that's just what she did. During this time, they were in Virginia. Up north in Massachusetts in 1692, Salem witch trials were going on. And in Salem, in Massachusetts area, was almost like another continent away, because that's where the Puritans were. That's where the crazy zealots were. And it was almost like the people who were trying to escape religious persecution that settled in that area. And I could be like talking on my ass here, but remember 5th grade history coming at you. It seems to me like, they settled there. Everything the clergy was involved in, where the Virginia people were the people from Europe that was more British non-zealot. I don't know what else you would call them. British
Just
establishment.
ordinary people.
Just ordinary people, God-fearing and stuff, but they weren't crazy with it because, the Salem witch trials, 19 people were executed for allegations of sorcery. During that time, though, witchcraft was on the books. It was on the law book. People coming from Europe still believed that witches exist, that there were demonic forces. It was all a real thing. Like I said, it was on the books. And back then, 19 years after the founding of Jamestown in 1626. So this is kind of a side note here, y'all. In 1626, 19 years after the founding of Jamestown Colony, which was the first permanent English colony, a grand jury, which you don't really think about like there being grand juries being established, but they did. Grand jury deliberated whether Goodwife Joan Wright, which I have a problem with that name. That should be Good Human.
Goody Joan.
Goody Joan, right? Was a witch. She had supposedly predicted the deaths of 3 women and caused illness as revenge for not hiring her as a midwife. And it was just pettiness. They ended up actually... Sorry. I have pettiness. There's a bullet point there. Pettiness. So in the Deep South, people like that, we call them wise women, wise people, root doctors. It was a different take on stuff because poor people, as we've talked about it before, had people in the community like, midwives, and they were looked upon as people who were helpful. It was a different take in New England. It wasn't so much the same. And I think largely due to the clergy being part of the government and part of the grand jury and whatnot.
It's bad you say grand jury, and I keep thinking, like, where did they get their wigs?
I know. It was like robes and wigs. I know. The same thing. I was like, grand jury. So New England was mainly where ministers were part of the government and they were in everybody's business. In Virginia, their government was not rooted in religion. It was more, witchcraft was more folklore that came down with them than really something that they saw was a threat. They were more worried about like fornication and stuff like that. So in 1697,
kept them up at night.
Kept them up
fornication.
Exactly. In 1697, Richard Capp, and this time Grace was about 37 years old, alleged that she had used a spell to cause the death of his bull. So he accused her of witchcraft, but he sued her for killing his bull. So he didn't say that like she used she practiced witchcraft. He basically implied it, but said that she killed my bull, and he took her to court. And the court actually did not make a decision when, he made this accusation because he didn't show up. Like he accused her, they set a date,
Son of a bitch.
And then he didn't show up. And so the court made no decision. They kind of like tossed it out.
I think that should be an immediate dismissal.
Grace and her husband, and when I heard this, I was like, well, damn. They filed a countersuit and they sued him for defamation against Capp. And he came to court after that, but it was settled out of court. And they don't have
It's kind of awesome.
It is awesome. I was like, hells yeah. It's like, they're like, okay, you come at me, you better bring it because I'm bringing it back to you. And they did. But they didn't have a lot of money to be thrown around in courts. And unfortunately, this is what happens. So the next year, a second claim, a neighbor, John Ginsburn of nothing, of assholery, he claimed that she enchanted his pigs and his cotton crop. So they're starting to be just like really, but they have 200 acres of land. And if nothing has like taught us, it is that if you are doing better than your neighbor, your neighbors will be petty as shit and they will find something to come at you with, unfortunately.
Enchanted pigs.
Oh, Lord, child. It gets better. They take this to court and nothing was done because they're like, what the fuck? It's like,
they're like, what does enchanted corn even mean? Is this like a Disney movie where it like raises its stalks in the air and sings?
And what is what is the purpose of enchanting a pig? Like, what is this? So the court does nothing to follow up on the accusation, and then the Sherwoods come back and they sue him for defamation. Unfortunately, it fails.
No.
And this is why I think it fails. It really should not have failed. But they did have more money than these people that were suing them.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe this is all just me making shit up, y'all. So I really feel like the court, the jury, whoever, how the fuck that works, 5th grade civics also. They had more money so they could pay the court costs. And I think that they ended up having to pay their court costs, and they ended up having to pay whoever sued them or they countersued's court costs, because I don't think the person, either they had like a cousin sitting on the board, again, however that works. All right. Same year, Elizabeth Bonds.
Miss Bonds.
Miss Bonds. We're going to call her Black Cat Bonds because it is she alleged that Grace snuck into her bedroom in the middle of the night.
Saucy.
With her husband sleeping right there.
He's saucier.
Oh, you just wait.
It's getting hot.
She woke up Elizabeth. Then she rode Elizabeth.
Excuse you?
Like a horse. All around the country. Made her come back. Tucked her back in. Then Grace turned into a black cat and jumped through the keyhole to escape.
Couldn't even be the window.
Husband suspected nothing because he was slept through the whole entire
That's the
pony
most
show.
realistic part of all of it.
Absolutely.
Why is it, you did a story about this before. She turned me into a horse.
But I got better. Oh man, this whole thing reeks of Monty Python.
How do you say that in court? She turned me into a horse and rode me all around the country.
And whipped me most viciously. I have the whip marks to prove it.
Oh, Lordy.
So, of course, she lost that, and they countersued because, I mean, what the fuck?
They're need like, to learn to let well enough alone.
Got into the poppy seed patch, did you not? But they failed. Again, they failed getting justice from all these people that are slandering their good name. And of course, they had to pay all the court costs, hers and them. It seemed like a racket between the people of Pongo and the court system. Mm-hmm. They're like, we need to bring some money in. Let's, make up some wild and crazy shit and sue.
Wild and crazy is right. And after that case, the judge is like, y'all, next time, just tone it down just a little. Just a little bit. I can't hardly do nothing for creativity. With this.
I'm going to be spending a long night thinking about fornication and this. It gets quiet for a couple of years. James dies in 1701, which means Grace, being a free woman, inherits all that land that she already fucking owned. And then they really start coming for her. So they hinted at witchcraft before, but they really sued her for like death of pig, death of bull, riding me like a horse. And
death of innocence.
Death of innocence. She was a smart woman, though. She didn't remarry. She's like, this was all my fucking land to begin with. I'm not going to remarry. Maybe, James was the love of her life. Who knows? After 3 boys and a husband, she may have just been sick of men and all of these men coming at her. But again, it opened her up with her neighbors and everything. Anyway, because it says Prince's Anne County, which is where Pongo was, obviously grown tired of Mrs. Sherwood, and they considered her like a general nuisance. Now, this was written in 1895 as a retelling of this story of her that was like 200 years earlier, which is crazy. It's crazy how long like this story has been around.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna take a drink of my not mixed.
Did not come out of a
Did
can.
not come out of a can.
Me too. Hold on.
All right. So she was okay for a little while. Then in 1705, her neighbors came up on her property,
Ugh.
and this is Elizabeth Hill and her husband, what's his face, came into her house or up in her yard and attacked her.
What?
Like brutalized her, beat the shit out of her. She had like cuts and bruises and stuff. Of course, Grace goes to the court and it's like, what the fuck? I'm minding my own business. You have to
on
really
your own property.
200 acres. You've got to mean to come up on my property, kind of deal. And they just beat the shit out of her for what? Who the fuck knows? She sues and she wins.
Oh.
Because they cannot discredit that she has like bruises and cuts and stuff. And she sues them, I think, for now dollars for about $500, but they award her only $100. So she did win, so that was a win, but then they cut the cost of how much that they really could pay. Well, that just stewed.
Oh no.
With old Elizabeth Hill.
Ugh, so this is a horsewoman, right?
No, that was Barnes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's Black Cat Barnes.
Okay, sorry.
Hill, this is like Hellion Hill. So in 1706, and Grace would have been 46 by this time, the beginning of the new year, the Hills are licking their wounds from, having to actually pay money for beating her up for whatever reason. They end up formally accusing Grace Sherwood of witchcraft. And all because, like, the whole kerfuffle, and then Elizabeth Hill has a miscarriage. And so she immediately blames Grace for it. And, it very well could have been
the strain of beating the shit out of someone else?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
It's maybe an unwise decision, Miss Elizabeth.
Kick them while they're downhill, right? At this time, they sue, and you're supposed to make an appearance in court. Well, Grace thinking, what the absolute fuck, y'all? What the fuck? She doesn't show up. Maybe she has the flu. Maybe her kids have the flu. Who knows? But she doesn't show up for court. And that's kind of like a big no-no. As it is now, it's like a thing that you don't
That's like a
do.
warrant. Yeah.
Right. So in March 1706 of the same year, 3 months later, the Prince Anne County justices sought to impanel 2 juries made up of women to investigate the alleged witchcraft. Witchcraft. Yeah, I wish I could say that this is all because I drank too much. But I think it's more has to do with just being tired.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Than anything else. Or just like how I am. Y'all know me. What they have to do when you, back in this time, when you charge somebody, like you take your complaint and you're like, she turned me into a newt. And they're like, okay, got it. So nowadays, the defendant has to prove themselves innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Back in those days, the people that charged you, persecutors, the whatever.
I know this. We know this.
5th grade civics.
Megan Mullally.
I don't
the prosecution, not the defendant, but the
prosecution.
Yeah, I
yeah.
guess,
So
yes.
so the people prosecuting have to prove. They have to gather evidence and prove that she is guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So they impaneled 2 juries made up of women. The first panel was ordered to search Sherwood's.
Melissa McCarthy.
Yes.
Sorry. The first panel was ordered to search Sherwood's.
Melissa McCarthy was ordered with all the other women that we cannot remember their name to search Sherwood's home for waxen or baked figurines, basically voodoo dolls,
yeah.
to indicate that she was a witch. The second group of women was ordered to look for demon suckle-teats. There are so many words in this story that I absolutely love. And that's one of them. By examining her.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, no, that's not good.
So demon suckle-teats, as according to the law in colonial times, is extra nipples or things that look like nipples. We call them maybe moles or freckles or just little skin tags or something.
Oh, shit.
Yes. Which, if you've ever had children and you are the least bit moly or freckly, you know that it just explodes after you have children. Like, there's moles and all kinds of like deformities. Like, childbirthing is just such bullshit. Damn it. I love my kid, but it wreaks havoc on our bodies in ways that nobody tells you. It's like all of a sudden there are like demonic teats everywhere. This is what they go looking for. And of course they fucking find it.
Of course. That's like exploitative, like from the get-go. It's like, yes,
it's a given.
Disrobe and we'll like...
we look at all your parts.
Maliciously examine you.
They charge these women to do this. In both instances, and I think this is kind of cool, the women are reluctant to go and do these searches.
Okay.
And it's because the women who, there's probably not a ton of women, so they all are they know her. Sorry. She's probably, smoked a doobie or two with some of the other women while the husbands are out in the field, and they're just like trying to deal with all the stress of colonial life, the bugs and the animals and rats and whatnot. Diseases.
Pestilence.
Yeah, and bad breath and bad teeth and all that stuff.
Demon teats,
right? The midwives, they're like, no, they don't show up.
Oh, nice.
The search committees are like, nope.
Cool.
Not going to do it.
That's awesome.
Interestingly enough, one of the women on the jury is the same black cat, Elizabeth Barnes, who had previously accused her of riding her like a horse. You have two systems going on here.
So wait, even Elizabeth Barnes refused to do this?
Well, it may have been one of those peer pressure things.
Oh. Or she may have been dreaming about being ridden like a horse every night and was like then.
Really looking for some like, come on. No, really, come on. Let's examine her. Witchcraft is a felony. And so if they handle it locally and they deem that she's a witch, she's automatically executed.
Shit.
So the locals, knowing her, she's part of the community, they don't want to have that responsibility, but, the formal charges have been presented to them. They're also kind of weary because they heard of what all those crazy people up in Salem did, and they're like, that was nuts. What the fuck do? We can't just say, no, we're not going to do this. Well, they can, but for some reason they're appeasing Mrs. Hill. Mm-hmm. They send it up to Williamsburg, more like the federal, kind of the state authorities. And the state authorities look at this and they're like, y'all, we are too busy, like taxpayer money. We're trying to establish these colonies. We're having to deal with Europe, all of these things. It's like, this is some petty shit. Get it out of our face. So they send it back down to locals, and the locals will go, well, fuck, what do? We don't want to kill her. It's obvious that they don't want to kill her. Hills want to kill her, but the locals in the court don't want to kill her. So they go back to the books and they're like, okay, what can we do to scientifically say that, she is or isn't a witch and put it to bed?
Does she weigh the same as a duck?
Exactly. So in the law books, there's this thing that is basically it's a duck test.
No way. It's like a witch litmus test. The best.
It is. And we're going to talk about, I've got a whole slew of the different tests for witches that we're going to talk about in the after talk.
Sweet.
On May 2nd, 1706, they can't really pin anything on her. They don't have any evidence. They don't have any hard evidence, which is why Williamsburg shoved it back down to them. They're like, there's nothing solid here we can do. It's petty. And you got two loudmouth Karens going, but she turned me into a newt kind of thing. So the sheriff arrests her, and on July 5th, they ordered a trial by ducking. They call it ducking. I'm like, that, I want to say dunking because that's what we call it, but they called it ducking. I guess it's like an old English thing.
Is this when they put them under the water and it's like if you drown? Jesus Christ. It's one of those stupid tests.
Yeah. Well, they're all stupid.
Yeah, they are stupid.
Okay. So ordered a trial by ducking to take place with Grace's consent.
Okay.
But due to like heavy rains, some say sleet. I'm like, y'all, it's July 5th. It's not sleeting up there. But, it was like really bad rains. They postponed it because they feared that the wet weather might harm her.
Okay.
So they waited a little bit and they're like, okay, we got Karen's to, appease. So they took her into Lynnhaven Parish Church, which is where the church she got married in. Mm-hmm. And they're like, look, just go ahead and ask for forgiveness for your witchery. And then I'm sure we'll give you a large fine to pay and we'll be done with this. But she replied, I be not a witch. I be a healer. Ye assholes. Sorry, I took creative license that last. But I'm sure she was thinking
ye assholes.
On July 10th at 10 a.m., Sherwood was taken down a dirt lane, now known as Witch Duck Road, to a plantation near the mouth of the Lynnhaven River. I will tell you part of what the swimming test entails here. So swimming tests were used to accuse witches. It started back way long ago where they threw you into a river, and if you survived, you're innocent, and if you drowned, well, you must be guilty. They'll take these women to the nearest body of water, and they'll strip down to the undergarments, and they'll bind them and toss them in to see if they'll sink or float. Since witches were believed to have spurned the sacrament of baptism, it is thought that the water would reject their bodies and prevent them from submerging. According to this, an innocent person would sink like a stone, but a witch would simply bob to the surface.
So it's like a lose-lose proposition because you're likely to drown, or if you bob to the surface, they'll kill you some other way.
But they would tie a rope around a man's waist so that they could pull either your live or dead body from the water.
Ah, okay.
So at least they did give you that.
That's good.
And like I said, this trial by water is an ancient practice. It was used not just on witches in like really old times, but it was used on suspected criminals and sorcerers who were thrown into rushing rivers and just allowed higher power to.
Yeah, I was going to say they're basically saying
fate.
Like God will save you or not.
Right.
Wow, that is bullshit.
It was banned in Europe during the Middle Ages. So before all this was going on, it was already banned. It reemerged in the 17th century, obviously, the century that we're in, talking about here, as a witch experiment. And it persisted in some locales well into the 18th century. For example, in 1710, the swimming test, and it was almost like the same time period. Like it must have been like the rage. Like everybody's talking about the witch ducking. So they tested in a Hungarian woman, Dorka Boda, who was obviously floated or either sunk, but was still alive, and they ended up just beating her and burning her at the stake as a witch. So a little bit more brutal over there. At least they're trying to be a little bit more, like I said, like all of this is on the books. So I feel like a lot of them, if it wasn't on the books, they would not have done this, but they're having to like appease, and it's part of the law. But they also know that it's all freaking ridiculous. This was entertainment. So, everybody was down there. Hurry up. We're going to miss the ducking. They were there on the banks, and I guess the sheriff noticed that there was the women that didn't show up on the banks too. So they grabbed them while they were there, and they were like, okay, you need to look for the devil's teats.
Oh my God.
And so
still on the teats.
They are, because they needed proof. And this is what they were trying to find, is proof. So they examined her body on the shore, and they checked also for any like devices she would use to free herself. They did find, I think, 2 spots, maybe 2 moles in her private areas, which is like, oh my God. I'm pretty sure that Black Cat Burns was the one that found those. They took her naked body to the shoreline. They checked her to make sure she didn't have any knives or anything, and they covered her with a sack. It says 6 of the justices ordered her to be rowed out about 200 yards, which is 2 football fields. Y'all know that. Into the river. I'm like, how big is this fucking river? And then she had her right thumb tied to her left big toe, her left thumb tied to her right big toe. And they did tie a strap around her waist and the waist of another man. And they threw her into the water, and before she went in, she is said to have said, "Before this day be through, you will get a worse ducking than I."
Oh, Jesus.
Ye assholes. So they threw her in, and she popped up. And not only she popped up, she had untied herself. She's
no shit.
She's like, what the fuck? And the story goes, although this is not really, all of this is written in legal documents, in recorded history documents during this time. Supposedly, somebody tied a 13-pound Bible around her neck, and they threw her back in. And of course, she popped back up, and she's like, "Are we done yet?" And they're like, "Okay, ye be a witch." But the fact is, after she pops up, actually, it's alleged that it started pouring down rain, so everybody got ducked, including her. And then they, like I said, they found 2 things like teats on her private parts, black in color. We call them moles. And she went to jail. And after this, we really don't know what happens because the court records were burned during right at the beginning of the Civil War.
Or the Revolutionary War, you mean? Or no?
No. Actually, it was the Civil War.
Yeah, that would be far away. Yeah, sorry.
They stayed, they kept them, and I think this is an account was actually written about 200 years later, which is why we know this, because it was such a huge thing, and it's a huge thing there that everybody still knows about. So it was written, I believe, in the 1800s, right before the Civil War. But what happened, the records were, sorry, just total brain fart. What ended up happening is the records were in the place that the Confederates thought that the Union Army was going to attack, and they didn't want the Union Army looking at their records, so they burned all of the records, and they lost a lot of information simply because they didn't want those records falling into the hands of the enemy. So it's really stupid. It's like destroying art, destroying culture, so that the enemy doesn't have it. So we don't really know. From what we can find out, we think that she was in jail for about 7 years.
Wow.
While she was in jail, the county actually was in charge of her land. I don't know what her sons were doing at this time. They weren't standing up for her mama or taking charge of them. Maybe they stayed on the land, but they were just working for the county. Who knows? But we think she was in there for about 7 years because in 1708, she was ordered to pay somebody 600 pounds of tobacco.
Okay.
Because I'm sure somebody maybe sued her again or something. And then in 1714, she had to pay back taxes on her land. And I think that is why we know that she was in there for that long, because nothing was really paid until she paid those back taxes in 1714. And that is because the Virginia Lieutenant Governor at the time, Alexander Spotswood, helped her recover her land from Prince Anne County, who obviously was living high on the devil's teat with her land. Who knows? Especially if she was growing tobacco. I mean, what a great crop. And wacky tobacco. She actually lived the remainder of her life quietly and didn't die until 1740 when she was 80 years old.
Cool.
So, that little stint of witchcraft and jail, and either everybody died of starvation or pox on their family. I don't know. Everybody seemed to have gotten along, and she lived a peaceful life. Legend has it, when she died, her sons put her body near a fireplace, and a wind come along the chimney, and her body disappeared amid the embers, and only one clue of a cloven hoof footprint.
Oh, no.
So that's the story when she died that was kind of circulating. Reality is they think that she was buried in an unmarked grave under some trees in a field near the intersection of Pungo Ferry Road and Princess Anne Road in Virginia Beach, probably on her property. Also, it is said, rumors spread when she died that, of course, everybody, like anything bad happened, it was her curse upon the community.
Just like when she was alive.
Just like when she was alive, right? You know, all the grandchildren's, of the horrible neighbors carried on the story. So any unnatural storms, anything that happening was blamed on her. Also, all the black cats that were around, any cat that came about, they were scared that it was like her minions or her coming back. So for a time after her death, local people started killing cats.
Oh, no.
Because they thought it was her coming back, because obviously they had guilt for being such shitheads. And the funny thing about that, though, is how karma works. Because if you kill cats in a rat-infested area, rats and disease come about. And in 1743, there was a recorded rat and mice infestation in Princess Anne County. Karma. Her home was on Muddy Creek, and it stood there actually for 200 years. It was burned several times in the 20th century by vandals. All that was left in 2002 were like bricks from the chimney, and that was bulldozed. So now part of a foundation and everything's overgrown. The property is owned by the federal government, so the government finally got their due. But it's part of the Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge. In 1973, Louisa Kyle wrote a children's book called The Witch of Pungo, which made the story very popular in that area again. In 2007, a California sculptor named Robert Cunningham depicted Sherwood with a raccoon and a basket of rosemary, and it was unveiled there.
I was wondering when you said the Girl Scouts were cleaning the statue, what...
And there's tons of shit named after her. Like they were either, I don't know if it's like the 1973 book that really, it was just a book of local folklore for children, which I happen to find on eBay and will be getting a copy.
Oh, cool.
So I'm excited about that. That statue is on the site of the present day Centera Bay Hospital, which is close to where the Colonial Courthouse and the Ducking Point were. The place of her watery test, the adjacent land are named Witch Duck Bay and Witch Duck Point. There's the Witch Duck Road, which we talked about, which Ashley told us about. Other commemorations on Virginia Beach include Sherwood Lane, Witch Point Trail. In 2014, a memorial marker is placed in a herb garden of the old Donation Episcopal Church, Sherwood's former parish church. A woman named Belinda Nash wrote A Place in Time, The Age of the Witch of Pungo. She can find on Amazon for $65. I did not buy. But she wrote this biography about Grace Sherwood. Belinda Nash worked tirelessly to get her pardoned. So in 2006, on the 300th year anniversary of her conviction, Governor Tim Kaine actually granted an informal pardon to Grace Sherwood, clearing her good name. There's annual reenactments, which is part of where I got a lot of the history. Everyone gets tied up and naked and goes like ducking, but not really. They reenact it, but I don't think there's actually any water, like for legal reasons or whatever.
That's stupid.
It's stupid. I'm sure people go ducking all the time. According to local residents, a strange moving light is said to be Sherwood's restless spirits that still appears each July over the spot in Witch Duck Bay where Sherwood was thrown into the water. And that is my tale of Grace Sherwood, the Witch of Pungo.
Good story.
Thanks so much, Ashley.
Thank
that was fun researching.
Yeah.
Who knew?
That's super cool.
Another little place on the bucket list.
Do you want more Strange South every week? We can help. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can join our Facebook fan group, Fans of the Strange South Podcast, to keep the chat going with our whole creepy community. Do you have a story idea for us or a story of your own to share? Email us at stories@thestrangesouth.com. Plus, if you join our Patreon, you not only help support the podcast, you get an exclusive bonus episode for every show and a discount on merch. You can find links to all of these things on our website, thestrangesouth.com, along with photos, links, and show notes from every episode, Strange South t-shirts, mugs, and other goodies. See you there.
Yeah, well, at least we made these.
Exactly.
Yours is probably approved. You used what? Sparkling grapefruit from Fever Tree and vodka? Mm-hmm. That's probably genius.
Yeah. It'd be good with gin, too, but I'm too lazy to walk upstairs and get the gin.
I just started pouring shit. I put vodka, and then I was like, grenadine, and then I was like, club soda, and then I was like, this club soda's flat, and then I put peach schnapps on top. I was like, that'll be fine. So that's what's in this little pink glass jar.
Glass jar. Cheers.
Cheers. Woo. Mostly I'm just relying on the vodka.
Yes.
At least I don't just drink straight vodka anymore. That was always good.
That's a step up.
I actually cut back a lot while I was in quarantine too. Because I didn't even drink caffeine. I didn't drink I drank tea, but I didn't drink coffee or alcohol for days.
Breathing.
I know. I was like surprisingly easy.
Wow.
This is probably really good for me.
So sick from just the headache.
I did have to start drinking at least a cup of coffee for the headache.
Yeah.
But yes. Well, onward.
Yes.
My story is probably pretty short, but it's interesting. It's been on my radar for a little while. Mm-hmm. And so I'm finally doing it. So
Yay.
The sources for this are a book called Labyrinth 13 by Kurt Rowlett, Reddit, the New York Times, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and a website called Truly Adventure. So this takes place in 1987. And like you, I need context. So I was looking up, what else happened in 1987?
Yeah.
I lived through it.
Right.
But, I
Can't
don't know, you get
remember
things
last
confused.
week, right?
Ronald Reagan is president.
Obviously.
This is one. So I wrote this several days ago. Full House aired its first episode in 1987.
Bob Saget.
I know. And listen, this is eerie. The night that Bob Saget died, I got the Full House theme song stuck in my head. And they announced the next morning that Bob Saget died. And I was singing it to everybody in my house.
Bob Saget.
I was like, oh my God, why can't I get the theme song to Full House out of my head? And it just wouldn't go away. And then the next morning, Bob Saget was dead.
So weird, kind of off connection to that. I have a piece that I'm going to talk about. I've got a lot to talk about in the after talk. But I want to talk about Alanis Morissette.
Ooh.
So that's kind of got the what is it? Goulier kind of connect.
Dave Coulier.
Yeah, whatever his name is.
Which is weird. So wait, was her
Ought to know
about Dave Coulier?
I think so.
Because see, they said it was from somebody on Full House, and I always assumed it was John Stamos because I mean fucking John Stamos.
Right.
Dave Coulier makes stupid jokes about a gopher. I was like, he can't date fucking Alanis Morissette. And he was he just seemed so old.
He is. And that's the problem. That's the whole thing that she went through is because she was obviously underage and
weird.
Yeah.
Why of all people, really? Dave Coulier.
I mean, young, impressionable. He's, I don't know.
Has a thing for gopher puppets.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh my God.
But
now
I
it
love
turned
her.
into a real weird pedophilia thing.
Sorry. Yes.
So 1987.
Yes.
Full House airs its
House.
first episode. Everywhere you look. And Michael Jackson's Bad comes out, which is weird to think of those two things happening in the same year.
Yes.
'Cause
it
in
was
my-
kind of and I was so anti both of those things during that time.
So baby Jessica falls down a well in Texas.
I remember that. Watched it on
That
TV.
was a big deal. So we're kind of honing in just a little bit on the area. There's a rally and a march called the Brotherhood March in Forsyth County, Georgia in 1987. This is not my story, but this is kind of some context.
That fucking sounds familiar.
To bring awareness to the racial cleansing, quote unquote, racial cleansing riot that took place in 1912 in Forsyth County, Georgia, when white residents lynched and murdered 3 black men and drove out the entire population of the county, nearly 1,100 people. Driven out of the county of Forsyth, Georgia. And the march as a hint, was not welcomed by the still all-white population of Forsyth County, Georgia in 1987. That's Georgia.
I can believe
in
that. We're still in the
1987.
80s, which is not
Yes.
far removed from the 60s.
And
honestly.
that will be another episode. I've had that one on my list for a long time too, but there's some stuff that is like, like the upstairs lounge. There's some stuff that's like really tough to talk about, but
yeah. And honestly, I mean, right before you came over, I was listening to My Favorite Murder, and they did the Rosewood Massacre.
oh Lord.
Which is the same thing
Yeah,
in Florida, right around that area.
Yep,
Northwest Florida.
Yep, I've read up on that one, the Rosewood Massacre, and Arkansas has stories. I mean, it's all over. So anyway, but
Yes.
Forsyth County is, whew,
Where is that, though?
something else. I need to look it up again. I feel like it is, if I'm right, it's southeast of Atlanta, and not. I'll have to look it up, but no,
You keep
wait a
talking,
minute.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, you look it up. Because Forsyth, no, it shouldn't be that far. Anyway, that gets a little bit closer to the area we're talking about, but this story happens in Atlanta. So like nearer to Atlanta's heart, Spaghetti Junction opens in 1987, which is the insane, just mad intersection of Highway 85 and Highway 285. So Spaghetti Junction opens in 1987. AZT is approved as the first anti-HIV drug in 1987. The gay Atlantas are still living through like what they would call the plague years for a long time. The first Dragon Con is held in Atlanta in 1987. I had no idea.
Way.
And the child murders were only 6 years ago at this point.
Oh, wow.
So like this is the context of where the story comes in.
Yeah, so Forsyth County is near Alpharetta.
So I was going to say
it's northeast of Atlanta.
So I was 100%. No, I was only 50% wrong. But Alpharetta, that's not. I mean, that's the suburbs now. Alpharetta is the suburbs.
Right.
Forsyth County.
It's just
That's where coming. No, it's funny that I've watched documentaries on this and I never like actually made
it's coming.
I never made a connection to where we were.
Yeah, because it's on this big lake here.
Lanier.
It's on Linear Lake. Mm-hmm. Linear. Fuck.
Lake Lanier.
Angles Linear Lake.
Here we are. We're in Atlanta, 1987. We're 1114 Fountain Drive. And this is like inside 285, just to the west of downtown. And the neighborhood is called Ashview Heights. It's like one of the first planned developments for middle-class African Americans.
I'm following
in
with my Google
Atlanta.
Maps.
Yes, do. So the area, this little suburban area, well, it's not suburban, it's in town. It was built in the 1920s, this planned development. It's where Morehouse College is and Spelman College. They're like right there. It's like a mile and a half from where the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is now. So it's like in town.
Mm-hmm.
Spike Lee grew up in Asheview Heights. We're at 1114 Fountain Drive. 1987, this couple lives there named Minnie and William Winston. He goes by Willie. They're in their late 70s. She's 77, he's 79. And they've lived in the house for 22 years. They rent it. It's a red brick home. It's got 6 rooms. They've raised 3 kids, and now they're retired, and they live in the house alone. Willie is, like I said, he's almost 80. He's not well anymore. He does dialysis at home. And when they did them more, I don't think they do them at home like they used to. They would have a dialysis machine. It would be kind of, you would just lay in your bed connected to this machine multiple times a week for hours at a time. And it cleans your blood out if your kidneys are failing. So that's the situation Willie's in. And, his wife is looking after him all the time. September 8th, 1987, it's nearly midnight, and Willie's asleep. And Minnie decides, she needs to take a bath, which I just think, like, you get older, you're up all hours of the night. Like,
Right.
You don't ever sleep normal. Like, I remember my grandma sleeping maybe 4 hours a night.
Right.
Like, she'd just be up all the time. So it's not that weird that Minnie's up taking a bath at midnight. So she runs the water. She gets in. She's, like, resting in the bathtub, eyes closed. She cleans herself up. And after she's done, she stands up. She wraps a towel around herself and steps out onto the bathroom floor. And as she steps out, she looks down and sees just dark red splotches all over the floor.
Oh my God.
They're covering, by some accounts, just covering the bathroom floor. And by some accounts, like spurting out of the bathroom floor like a sprinkler or a fountain. like just shooting out between the tiles. And she's like, what on the living earth is happening in my bathroom? So she kind of tiptoes out of the bathroom to try and avoid these weird little whatever geyser things and into the hall. And she says there's splotches of this red stuff in the hall on the floor. And it's on the baseboards. It's on the walls. There's like dime-sized blotches up to like silver dollar size. So she follows the hall to the bedroom because she's thinking this, like, something's happened to Willie. Something's going on with this machine. And she gets there and she shakes him awake and she says, come look at all this red stuff coming out of the floors. Because he's like, she can shake him awake. He's okay.
Right.
She says later on that she's not scared when this happens because she doesn't even know what this stuff is.
Right.
And she says it doesn't look or smell like blood.
Right.
But they call the fire department because there's obviously something wrong.
Right. You don't want to like have some
Like,
kind
is it
of like red
poison
algae
or
blooming.
Exactly.
Stuff.
So, like, she calls the fire department. The EMTs get there first because they're assuming, like, okay, there's red stuff all over your floor. Obviously, someone's bleeding. Obviously, someone's injured. So they get there. They look around. Red stuff is not spurting out of anywhere anymore. But it's all over the place. And no matter what Minnie says to them, they're like, this looks like there's blood all over your house.
Right.
The EMTs check on Minnie and Willie. And there's no scratches, there's no reason. They check his dialysis machine. They make sure there's not a leak in it somewhere. Though how the leak would have spurted 2 rooms away, I don't know how.
Right. And got under the door.
I know, right? So Willie, in the newspaper, Willie's like quoted as saying, I'm not bleeding. My wife's not bleeding. And nobody else was here. The fire department passes them on to police.
Right.
And because they're like, okay, well, this looks like blood. Maybe there's some weird foul play. Maybe these people are taking us for a ride. They're hiding some murder weapon.
They just called you because.
I know, right? It's weird.
Yeah.
So they think maybe there's an injured person hiding in here somewhere, something like this. But they're like, okay, clearly we have left our jurisdiction. This is police stuff now. And so the police come and the property managers also come so that they can kind of look in all the spaces and everything. And they say they find, like in the newspaper, it said copious amounts of this red liquid spattered and in blotches in the kitchen, the living room, every single hall, the bedroom, the bathroom, on the back door, in the crawl space, and in the basement underneath the TV stand. Just all kinds of random weird shit. It looks like a lot of it looks like it's been sprayed, like at a downward angle.
Right.
It's just, nobody can really make any sense of it. As I'm reading this, I was trying to think, like, what, your mind immediately goes through, like, what would your theory be on this? Like, what do you think this would be? Do you have guesses?
The only thing that I can really think of, and this is just from living in a house with old iron pipes, is that it's some like decayed iron rusted pipe that broke in a wall or something, and it's just flooding everywhere, and it's all just like rusty.
That's what they thought too.
Yeah.
They went for the pipes right away. They were like, did water shoot rusty water or steam out of burst pipes? And there was no burst pipe. They went and looked at all of it with the property managers. And that's what I thought that one too. They thought the police immediately went to the injured animal idea. They were like, okay, well, maybe since most of it's like close to the ground.
Satan?
I know, right? Little hoof marks and all the blood puddles.
There's some teats we need to investigate.
So the police are like, okay, well, is there an animal? And Willie and Minnie are like, we don't have dogs. We don't have roaches. We don't have mice or rats. Like, we take very good care of our house. Nothing died in here. Nothing is exploded copious amounts of blood in every room in our house.
Not that I've been around copious amounts of blood, but from everything that I've read or, watched, like on forensic files and stuff, like when you have that much blood, it has like a coppery smell to it.
And that's one of the weird things
smell.
Is because Minnie specifically said, it does not smell like blood to me. But the EMTs were like, looks like blood. They're already kind of at odds.
Like, taste it.
With what they think it might be. There's also theories that like latex, latex paints, especially in older houses, if humidity gets to layers of paint and there's something that can kind of leach through and drip down, that's a pretty common thing to have happen, to have like these kind of, and it looks like.
What time of the year was this?
But it was September. Well, it's Atlanta though.
It's Atlanta in September. It's still
so
hot.
It could still be hot as fuck.
Yeah.
But it's not dripping down the walls is one of the things. It's not coming from a high place and dripping down to a low place. There's no like rivulets. It's like a spatter blotches on the floor and on the baseboards only, which would be more like the rusty pipes idea.
Right.
But there's no pipe leak. That was one of their thoughts. My thought was, okay, well, is this a high crime neighborhood? Because it's in town Atlanta. So could somebody have gotten hurt and tried to hide from somebody else or hide from police or something, gotten into their house and kind of stumbled through all the hallways? Well, I was just thinking, like, would you have stumbled through the hallways, through the house, from the front door to the back door and just gotten blood everywhere?
Would you? I mean, you would be passed out from blood loss.
I would think so.
That much blood.
And again, it was like you would have handprints or something. There would be fingerprints somewhere on the, in the house, but they didn't find a body. They didn't find evidence. And one of the reports says that their house had an alarm system. All the doors were locked, and it was verified that everything was secure.
Wow.
When they went to bed, and she went to get in her bath.
Wow. Yeah. Scientifically, there's some kind of reactive agent that got triggered.
For real.
And that, yeah.
Isn't it crazy?
That is crazy.
So the police say, well, we've looked around at this. There's no body. There's no sign of forced entry. There's no crime for us to investigate. I guess we'll test this liquid and send it out to test, but we can't really do anything else,
Right.
And Willie's like, I don't know what that stuff is. Like, neither of them is convinced that it's blood.
Right.
They send this out to test, and the next morning, as soon as this hits the papers, people
House
start to
blood.
fucking flock to these poor people's house.
I would be like, that's $20.
No
entrant.
shit. I know. And it's on talk radio.
Willie's
like all
dialysis.
all the morning commute jocks are like, call us in and tell us what you think the blood house has coming up through the floors.
That's right.
And so
Halloween's
all these
coming
people,
up.
I know. And so of course they're getting all these calls from psychics, and they're getting all these calls from like parapsychologists and just people who are saying the stuff that we're saying with like zero expertise or evidence.
Oh, no.
Because at least we can look back at the newspaper reports that go on for days. These people had nothing. And it's all over the TV news.
They had their opinion.
They had their opinions, exactly. And apparently a lot of boredom and nothing to do with their time, because these people are like calling the police department nonstop saying like, is there really blood dripping down the walls of this house? And he's like, we never said there was blood dripping down the walls in any of these newspaper reports.
I heard.
Amityville was just a couple years ago,
Right. Yes. Satanic Panic.
Well, yeah, it's 1987, so everybody is like, some going on in this house.
Procter and Gamble in this house.
So, like, and people somehow get Minnie and Willie's phone number, the Winston's phone number,
they do.
and start just calling their house, showing up outside their house.
Assholes.
Oh, yeah. Psychics banging on the door saying, we can get rid of the blood. We can get rid of the blood.
And be like, $5 million.
No shit.
Give me some money.
And these people
to annoy me.
These people become such a problem. The police actually, as a favor to the Winstons, declare the house a crime scene so that they can legally keep all these people away.
Smart. Yeah.
And tell them that they're trespassing and they have to leave.
No, they're trespassing anyway.
They are, and they should have to leave anyhow.
Right.
So it's weird because like there's all these people that are obsessed with this, like, oh, it's a blood house. Oh, it's all this. And Minnie and Willie just want to fucking go to bed.
Yeah.
Like
we have been up literally for 6 weeks.
And that's like what they're saying. They're
bed.
like in the paper saying we've never had anything like this happen before in this house.
I still have shampoo in my hair.
I know. They've never had to call the police ever in the 22 years that they've lived in the house. And Ms. Winston is quoted in the paper saying, I still don't believe it's human blood. I don't care what the police say, because the lab results come back 2 days later and say that it is human blood.
Oh, no.
All over their house.
What?
And it is type O blood, and both of the Winstons are type A. So their house has type O blood, apparently.
What the fuck?
So it's like, It's in a lab taste. It's human blood all over their house. And they have no fucking idea how it got there. And I was like, man, even if somebody like snuck in, they couldn't have poured their own blood on the bathroom floor while she was in the bathtub. Like, how is this even possible? She says in the paper on the 10th of September.
I'm like floored.
I know. You think this has got to be some kind of a thing, but it's human blood. And so on the 10th of September, she's quoted in the paper saying, I don't know where it came from, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. People are calling out here to see it and troubling us. I haven't had any sleep today, and I probably won't get any tonight. And her husband says, I'm not bothered by it. I'm bad enough shape as it is.
Oh my God.
So it's like, this is like 80-year-old couple just like, will you leave me the fuck alone? I don't even care anymore. Just clean it up and get out of my house. The state crime lab starts asking questions like, has this been mishandled? Like, obviously the blood that is sent to them is not brand spanking new. They're like, if you had sent me the sample 12 hours before, we could have told you more, but it was kind of dried up. And, you know, so there were questions about the evidence handling.
Right.
They stood by that it was human blood. And that it was typo human blood.
Well, it
so
seems to be enough of it. They could have had plenty of samples.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it sounds. When they say copious amounts, like that sounds
And if it's
like a lot.
oozing up from the floorboards, then I've got a theory, but go ahead.
One of the police's theories, like before they give up on this, because, you know, like they said, it's not a crime scene.
Right. No body, no crime.
What they end up landing on is the hoax theory. And I hate this because I think it's dismissive and maybe exploitative, but they land on this theory, yes, that Willie wanted attention from his kids, and since he had access to blood because he's on dialysis and goes to the hospital sometimes,
He does not have access to
he
blood.
spewed blood all over his own house to get his kids' attention.
How many times have you been to the doctor and they gave you access
That's what
to
I was like,
any of their medical
yeah,
equipment?
like how does being sickly mean you have access to blood at
and
the
then
hospital?
that much blood, how you sneak that shit out?
Because they've
like
proven it wasn't his.
Right.
You know? But they all said also one of their daughters, one of their 3 kids, one of their daughters is a nurse, and she also had access to blood. So maybe the kids were hoaxing the family to get their parents declared incompetent so they could like inherit or something. Which
Okay.
they have zero evidence to go on.
Zero evidence, but that kind of rings a little bit. That's kind of a little bit more of what I was thinking about. It's like,
Was it?
since there is blood involved with the dialysis, I was thinking that maybe like somebody brought the wrong type of blood and then couldn't return it and maybe stuck it somewhere.
Then just decided to just all along the place.
I don't know. I don't know how it got from the not return place to all over the fucking house. But I was thinking like I feel like it has something to do with the dialysis, but not through them, like some other means of happening. Because I think they probably would have cracked or something if it was them.
Yeah, it's just like they seemed genuinely. I think like being baffled would be one thing, but if you're attention seeking, you're not going to be telling everybody to get the fuck out of your house.
Right.
Immediately.
You're going to be charging them $5 at the door like I would do.
Yeah, for real. So, you know,
You want the gold package?
please.
Here's a candle to pray to
Here's a
our Lord
tiny-
Satan.
Here's a tiny sample of the blood in a vial that you can take home for an extra $25. So
Should have called us.
I know, right? So the police end up, you know, sending out this like, well, we think it must be a hoax. And they basically end the investigation on that note.
They
That's
dismiss
it. Something else happens. We move on, you know, which, I mean,
Yeah,
you
they
can't
really can't do
criticize
any-
them
they
for.
can't do
What are they
anything.
supposed to do?
They got other things to do. Yeah.
Exactly. But, you know, people still, you know, continue to try and call them until the point where like Winnie and
They're like 200 years old now.
I know, like Willie and Minnie are heard from outside the house shouting things like, this is all lies. There's no blood here. Just go away. And one of the things that I had read, somebody had taken that and turned it into like they were performing some sort of a ceremony to get the blood to leave. And therefore the next day everything was quiet again. And I'm like, bull fucking shit. They were telling people to leave their house alone.
Exactly.
This was never solved. They never returned to it. The Winstons never revisited it.
It was probably like
And-
a 2-year-old.
I know.
Like got a hold of the wrong blood that they brought from the hospital and hid it. And then they were just like, told nobody.
All I can picture every time you say that, I'm just thinking for some reason of like a whoopee cushion filled with blood that's just like squeezed,
Right, like it's
and,
under
like,
the couch, and you sit on it, and it just like
spurts
oozes
everywhere.
Right. Well, it could. Well, I mean, you could take the blood and put it in the wall, and then if it leaks, it's gonna come out under the floorboard.
Yeah.
And stuff, but you would think there'd be like an origin point
Yeah.
somewhere, and
Well,
then
and
you would
that's-
have the bags left over unless they cleaned it up afterwards.
Yeah. And it all seemed to happen so quickly. I mean,
Right.
it was like between him going to bed and her getting in the bath, because
Right.
it was on. That's the real kicker for me, is that the primary point of contact was her stepping out of the bathtub onto a floor covered
Yeah.
in blood.
Because she
How could
got in the
somebody have done
tub
that? Yeah, and she
without-
would have noticed it when
Right.
she got in. I mentioned at the beginning this book called Labyrinth 13 by Kurt Rowlett. He'd called the Winstons after this whole thing had gone down, and they stand fast with this, like, I don't know what it was. I don't give a shit, to be honest. Just,
Right.
I don't want to talk about it anymore.
right.
But he takes that and goes to and in the absence of another explanation, this is not an illegitimate point. A supernatural cause is just as likely as any other cause.
Yeah, if you
in
don't
the
know, you don't
absence
know.
of And so this truly adventurous site that had a very long form version of this story on it that took a lot of liberties with what the people involved may have been feeling and doing at the time. But one of the things that he talks about, I'm assuming it's a he, because of the aforementioned stuff, but that the house at 1114 Fountain Drive was previously owned or occupied by a man named Albert Thompson and his wife. Thompson was the regional racial relations director for the Federal Housing Authority at the time. And so he looked at like fair housing practices around the city. And in 1950, when he was 41 years old, Thompson was driving down the street when a truck rammed into his car. And the next day, the newspaper listed him as one of several accident victims, pointing out that he was, quote, a Negro in the article. So he was treated at the hospital and then sent back to his house, but he still had serious injuries and internal bleeding. And the driver who had rammed his car with a truck was a white guy who was a veteran from World War II, didn't get injured. He was basically he was booked for having improper brakes. And he said that was the reason for the accident, and they just kind of gave him a slap on the wrist despite the fact that he caused this major injury to this other person.
Right.
Thompson is back at his house trying to heal from, I guess, internal hemorrhage.
Right.
And
Which, I mean, how do you really heal from that?
yeah, and this other guy is like walking away scot-free. He says the event was swept under the rug while the victim suffered on Fountain Drive with internal bleeding, with his wounds hidden and ignored, and he dies on Halloween
No shit.
of that, whatever that year was. I don't know if he even said what year it was. He takes a lot of liberties with like what could be the paranormal
Right.
background of this, but that's one of the things that he talks about, which at least it's place-based.
Right.
So he's saying since this happened at the beginning of September, and then there was that car accident that led to the man's death in October, it's not impossible that there's some kind of a paranormal association with that. They have never experienced anything, though, in 22 years of living in this house.
Right.
A lot of other people posited like maybe poltergeists, but there's no young people in the house. Again, no prior experience with any disturbance. And as far as we know, there's no further experience with any disturbance, but we're pretty sure that the Winstons wouldn't say a damn word about it if anything
if
else ever
something else
happened.
They like learned their lesson.
Exactly.
Like, fuck that shit.
So I was going to do this in the aftertalk, but I'm going to do it real quick now just because it sounds like you've got a lot of aftertalk stuff too. The whole walls bleeding thing is, I guess, a pretty common paranormal phenomenon. I think we've all heard, like we've seen it like Amityville and like blood rushing through the Shining Hotel and all that kind of stuff. So I found this article on Stranger Dimensions that says it's haunting phenomena when the walls bleed, and it lists and it lists the house I just talked about, which the shorthand of it is the Atlanta Blood House.
Right.
So if you want to know anything about it, look up the Atlanta Blood House, and that's what you'll get. It listed a whole bunch of different houses that had similar sorts of things. It was one of the Talman House in Wisconsin had a haunted bunk bed, and there was intense paranormal activity after they bought it. It was like a used bunk bed in their house, and they had apparitions, and ultimately they left their house, but bleeding walls was one of the things that had happened, and there are rumors that that
Oh.
was one of the things that had happened in the house.
Hmm.
Mary Knoll Seminary in Illinois is one of them, haunted by the spirit of a monk who hung himself in the bell tower. And after his death, there were unexplained noises, blood oozing down the tower's exterior is one of the things. There's a Pittsburgh family who was apparently tormented by a demon on Brownsville Road who said bleeding walls were one of their apparitions that they saw. And then another in San Pedro, California, who had, it was a poltergeist that was really violent and would do like physical attacks, including attempted hanging.
Oh, damn.
They had a mysterious red ooze that would drip down from their cupboards and things like that, that was later reported to be blood plasma. There are a lot of things that, I guess there's a lot of that type of thing that happens paranormally, but see, a lot of it just doesn't jibe with the story.
Right.
So it's just one of those kind of unsolved, like 100% unsolved, like no fucking clue mysteries.
Right. And you know, I don't know. To me, I feel like it's like the simplest thing. Like the simplest.
Take the simplest answer. That's probably the right one.
Right. Occam's razor.
But what is it?
But what is it?
I don't know what it is. I would have. I think the dead, like the dying animal idea, but I just
God,
can't
that's so
get
much
over.
blood. People, I mean, animals don't have that much
know.
blood.
And all the random ass places it was, and I just can't get over it being in the bathroom where she was. You know.
Right.
So
Yes.
yeah, mystery. If you've got a theory, let us know. I would be dying to know if you have other ideas.
Yes, absolutely.
That's my story.
Awesome. I love that. Love it. Thank y'all.
Episode 99 is a wrap.
Yes.
Yay! Thank you guys.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you so much. And we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.